and welcome back to another episode of Four Chicks Chatting. Robin, Mary, Fran, and Kristen and myself are here today, and our topic is it's going to sound like a negative topic, but it's really not when you think about it. Um, Rejection.
Boo.
Bum, bum,
Boo.
bum. Now, I just told the listeners it was not a negative topic. Now they just switched the channel.
No, it's not.
It's really not. I think well, we'll get into it, but I think sometimes rejection is necessary.
100% agree. It's kind
I
of
mean,
like failure, because if you don't experience that, how do you grow?
the reason why you guys are here is because I've personally never been rejected at anything, and so I felt like I didn't have anything to add. So thank God for the three of you. So what do you guys have to say?
Reject that opening remark.
I think we could each take turns being the resident expert on rejection because we've all experienced it in droves. But I think the point is that if we hadn't experienced it at the certain points that we were, I think sometimes you have to look at it as it's kind of like you know how the little kids have well, the big kids have them too, but trains have the switch and the switch gets flipped and all of a sudden you go on another track. Sometimes I feel like that's what rejection is. It's sort of a switch, whether you're aware of the fact that you shouldn't be in a certain space or not. Sometimes rejection serves to get you off of that track and onto a different one that you might not have even thought about going down. And that's where you need to end up.
Oh, Mary Fran, I have a
that.
quote for that. You want to hear it?
Yeah.
Yes,
Wanna hear it?
especially if it makes me sound smarter.
It's a quote from Henry Rollins. We all learn lessons in life. Some stick, some don't. I have always learned more from rejection and failure than from acceptance and success. So
Ooh.
it's just like you said, it's that switching that track. And there's so much talk these days about mindset. And so if we can take that mindset when something doesn't go our way, if we submit to a speaking engagement and we don't get selected, or, maybe that big paying client that we really wanted doesn't come on board, whatever that rejection may be, if we can change that thought process and change the mindset to, you know what, I wasn't meant for that. I wasn't meant to put my energy into that. Those people wouldn't have appreciated me, or they were going to be nothing but a huge headache. So I don't want to work with them anyway, and switch that mindset to, this is what's good for me at this moment, and then go forward with that mindset and use it as a stepping stone for, to learn and advance yourself in another way.
Yeah, I think that's point on.
Tagging onto that whole mindset thing, a couple years ago I read Glennon Doyle Melton's Love Warrior, and I listened to a lot of interviews with her with something I was going through, and she talked about you want to be resilient and you want your kids to be resilient, but how can you become resilient unless you have practice in resilience? So think about it. The more, just keep getting rejected, because the more you get rejected, you build your resilience muscles. I mean, and I actually, in my personal life, had a thing of rejection, and then it actually, all the soul searching I had to do to be resilient and bounce back from that. Then I put a book out there, and I had such a suit of armor in terms of mindset and all the work I did to become resilient. It didn't bother me as much if people don't receive my work as well anymore. Because along the lines, one of the things I also studied was Brene Brown's vulnerability stuff, where she quotes Teddy Roosevelt with that whole in the ring. I'm not interested. If you're not in the ring, with me getting sweaty, bloody, blah, 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 I'm not interested in what you have to say, because we're not on the same thing here. It's so much easier to do it that way, to, with that whole switch with the train. It's easier to switch your mind. If they're not in the ring, they don't matter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You and I listened to a bunch of podcasters a while back about speakers. And one of the people said, and I wish I could remember his name, I'll find it and I'll put it in the show notes, but he said something to the effect of, don't worry about pleasing the 5% of people in the audience who aren't going to want to hear what you have to say, who aren't going to like you. There are going to be people, even if they've paid to see you, there are going to be people who say, but you can't get bogged down by that. And I think one of the lessons that I've learned, Robin, going back to what you said about if you do all this work and you don't get the gig or you don't get that, you've still done all that work, and that work will be useful at some other point. I've found so many times that, something big will come up and I'll think, oh, I need this or that. And I think, well, wait a minute, I did that ages ago. And there it is. It's already there. It's already done. So no matter whether you get to the end game that you choose, and this again brings up another thing that I say to people all the time, don't be married to outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
You can't institute something and expect that it's all going to go your way. Value the work that you do in the process because it has value in and of itself, intrinsically.
We've talked about trust the process. We did a whole episode on that.
Yeah.
And it all does happen. I mean, you still got to go out there and go for things.
Mm-hmm.
But if you get rejected, if you don't get the gig, look at did you guys see Jennifer Robinson? Her post that she finally got into. She's been applying every year for the
PA conference
for women.
Yeah.
For those listeners that aren't aware, it's like this ginormous, what are they up to? 9,000 women come to this thing at the convention center in Philadelphia. And Jennifer has been trying because her story is unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
And she's been applying. And then she finally got in. And can you imagine just
phenomenal.
Watching her and knowing her for a couple of years, who she is now and the strength that she has now compared to a couple of years ago when she started applying. I mean, she's gotten stronger and better and better. And now it's her time to go rock that.
Yeah.
And she went through that whole rejected. I just ran into her at the store the other day. She's like, man, every year I was like, knocked me down, and she kept going, kept working at it. So it pays off and it happens when it's supposed to happen. Of course, I say that now with a big smile. Meanwhile, on the days I don't get those gigs and the people don't say yes and buy the 150 books, I'm like, what the?
Well, yeah, I mean, let's not Pollyanna sugarcoat this. I mean, it sucks. Being rejected, it sucks. And it's not about not validating that experience. You have to allow yourself the opportunity to feel that. And yeah, I mean, feel sorry for yourself. Go off and lick your wounds for a while because you did do all that work and you didn't get chosen, and that sucks.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't live in that place. You can't live in that space. So feel bad for yourself, do the whole poor me routine, and then the next day figure out what to do with what you've already done to try something else.
Okay, so I have to come clean with you guys. I lied earlier. And
do not get into the Victoria's Secret fashion show this year.
No, I didn't. It wasn't me. They used my body. They just put somebody else's face on it. So I feel so much better now that that's off my chest. Anyway, the point is I have been rejected, and I saw a quote that I thought I wrote, but somebody else must have got it there before I did. But her name is Michaela Watkins, and her quote is, "Rejection and I are old friends." And I thought, when was the first time that I actually felt rejected? And this is where, I cue the Let It Go soundtrack right now. But I tried out for cheerleading in 5th grade. Okay?
Wow, we're going way back.
Yeah. And I remember exactly where I was standing. And I remember exactly who was judging me. And let's just say I was in double digits in the 6th grade. So I was a little butterball. But anyway, I knew those cheers. And I was an Eagles fan. And I thought I knew football. But anyway, I didn't make it. And I was so upset. So then I thought, okay, 6th grade came along. They got to take me down. Maybe they'll feel sorry for me. Nope. Denied.
Does this ever go up, this story? Is there any part of it? No.
No.
But
anyway.
What
Maybe
does that
you should have
teach you?
considered sports instead.
Well, then I thought, well, maybe I'm smart enough. Maybe people like me. Let's try out for student council in high school. No.
Aren't you the one who said this wasn't a negative topic?
Yeah. But anyway, the point of all that is,
Just when those other listeners came back, here she goes again.
no, the point is, look, I'm still here.
Yeah.
I didn't die,
Mm-hmm.
right? I may have cried. I may have gone in the bathroom, like you said, and licked my wounds for a little bit and cried and had a major pity party and ate a pound of M&Ms. But here I am. And I have 2 beautiful children and an incredible husband. And so these things aren't life or death. And they may feel like that at that moment because what I think, my opinion, is they bring on this sense of worthlessness.
It's
And
that vulnerability, that part that
yeah,
Brene Brown talks about just being laid open and having people say, no, not you, not you.
no. It's like, no, 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 yes, no, no, no. Like, why am I so
But that's good though, Kath, because there are a lot of no's. We're
Mhm.
not the only ones that get the no's.
Right, right.
So
So,
that's
Look,
you know,
Mel Robbins had a quote today on Instagram that talk about perfect timing, and she says, "Not everyone likes you, but not everyone matters."
oh, I love that.
let's get Mel on the phone.
Right? Caller? Let's get her on
Caller?
here.
Oh, that's
Great.
me. Caller?
Seriously. And I think that's part of my issue just in my own personal journey lately with someone hacking my life and try to get people to, and I think people have been involved in this in business too. You get really good at what you do and then people start, throwing stones to say, no, she's not that great. I'm better over here. Come over this way. And you know what? A lot of them just don't matter. You got to sit there and evaluate. Now, if there's somebody that has an opinion that someone swayed them to and they do matter in your life, sure, you handle that. But for the most part, the folks that somebody else said that too, stop that. His quote was, I'm going to think of his name in a minute. We've talked about him before. Stop making people that don't matter. It's like you got to figure out you can't have everybody like you. It's like impossible. It's impossible.
Well,
Yeah.
it's like we talked about. Maybe we did, maybe we didn't. Maybe it was something I put on Instagram. But there's nothing new out there. Like somebody has done almost everything there is to do. So it's our job and responsibility to then do it and make it better. Put a new spin on it. But if they don't like us, they can go to them.
Mhm.
But as long as we're putting that effort in to make it the best we can make it and to be our best selves, we have to remember that because nobody is going to be liked by everyone. There's always going to be a hater. There's always going to be someone that's going to put you down to make themselves feel better. And I think that's the way you almost have to look at it every time, is that it just was not the right fit at this point in time.
I'm going to add something else to this conversation because this was part of my personal experience. Sometimes you get rejected because it's not good enough.
Mm-hmm.
For example, I've been fortunate to have done 2 TEDx talks, but it was a lot of applying to TEDx talks and doing a whole lot of work and all that before that and getting rejected by a ton of them. And I was rejected, I know now, because it wasn't ready.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't the right talk. It wasn't refined enough. It wasn't where it needed to be. And, it's like I said, yeah, go off and lick your wounds, but then come back with a critical eye and look at why did this happen? It's perfectly plausible that it wasn't the right fit, but could it have also been because it didn't quite measure up and you need to tweak it, or you need to adjust whatever it is, or you need to whatever? I mean, there's a very real opportunity there to once again fine tune whatever it is you're presenting and make it better. And then go after something again. That was a very real experience I had. So we can't just take rejection as, oh, they didn't like me. Maybe they didn't, and that's okay. And there's somebody else that will, but maybe you need to do a little more work. And in my case, I did.
Yeah, and then think about it this way too. Maybe this will help too. The things I think that, at least for me, where I feel the most pain and feel it the deepest in terms of rejection, like you're saying, applying for TED Talks and whatnot, the most pain comes from the things I care the most about. right?
Yeah.
So I feel like, God, I have this message, I have this book, I have this thing that has to get out there, and they're not receiving it. They're rejecting me, and that hurts deeply. But when you care about it wholeheartedly, and this is your passion, you do exactly what Mary Fran just said. You lick your wounds, you take a critical eye, you ask your tribe, how do I make this better? What's wrong with this right now? How do I make it better? How do I make it better? And you keep working at it. Yeah, get rejected, but you keep letting that fuel the work that goes into it, because then when it's the right timing, and it's right, what is that quote? Luck is when preparation meets opportunity. And when it's
I love
all
that.
right and you've put in all the work, then when you get that stage, then when you get that client that's going to take you, wherever, that's the sweet spot, right? But it's the not giving up and going, screw this. I put everything into it. They don't want it. I'm going to go do something else. That's when you're rejecting the message you have for the world. That's not cool.
Right.
Well, and think of it as that's the universe's way of telling you that there's something better out there. So maybe they rejected you. Maybe you would have only sold 10 books there. But this person's going to call you and they're going to want you and you're going to sell 100 books. So, I mean, it's always, I fully believe that everything happens for a reason, but I really think
to say that. Yep. That's a big thing.
Yeah.
In our house, everything happens for a reason. Here's a funny story, and has nothing to do with me, but this gentleman that I follow, his name is Adam Grant, and he's a psychology. You like him?
I like him. He actually spoke at PA Conference Women a couple years ago too.
He's so cool. So for those of you who don't know him, he's a psychology professor at Wharton, and all that psychology stuff and people analytics. That's kind of my jam. But anyway, he told the story on LinkedIn about rejection, and he talked about writing to get tenure. And so he was writing all these papers, and they just kept getting rejected. And one of the editors came back and said, you know what? You should go back and read Adam Grant. and he said, dude, I am Adam Grant.
Seriously?
I swear to God. I'll put the link in the show notes to the article, but I just thought that was hysterical because
that's hysterical.
Gosh.
I mean, that's just like, hey, okay, that particular paper, that just wasn't meant to be. That person was just not open to what Adam was saying at that time. It had absolutely nothing to do with Adam because it was Adam. And so take it away from us and what we've done wrong and what we need to do better. And it just wasn't the right time for that other person.
That's a really good point, Kath, because I'll get the words. What we also have to recognize is that there's a subjective element to this that goes beyond what we ourselves have done. When you put anything out there to the world, it falls to other people to accept it or to reject it. And for exactly the reason that you said, sometimes people are not in the frame of mind or the place to accept it at that particular moment. But, you hit those same people. I mean, like, I'm thinking about the world of book publishing. I mean, I self-publish now just because I don't want to get into that game of waiting for somebody to say yes. But in that world, you query an editor one day and they go, nah. You do send the same letter to the same person 3 months later and the market has shifted a little or something else has changed. And suddenly it's like, oh, this might be something that we're interested in. So you have to go into these things knowing that, yes, there's a level of vulnerability on your part, but it's also not all about you and what you've done. It's about the audience and whether they're in a place to receive it. And that subjectivity is not something you need to own unless there's something wrong with what you've done. Right. That's a different story. But you can't own someone else's response to it. And you can't let that be the thing that reverberates in your head all the time because it's subjective. What's going on in their life that made them say yes or no? Yeah,
they could have just had a bad day. That's why, the rule in sales is you've got to hit people at least 7 times with the same message. And you'll eventually maybe get that call or get that meeting. But it's when they're ready to accept it and open to receive it.
Yeah. I think it's also important when you have been rejected not to change your message and not and to sway from being true to yourself and true to what you believe in just so that you can be accepted. Because I think, sometimes that happens too. And I've read about it happening with authors where they submit a proposal for a book or an idea and they're like, oh no, there's not enough sex in that, or there's too much faith in that, or whatever the case is. And so people will change that just to be accepted. But I think then you're going away from who you really are and what your values are. And it's not worth it to me to be accepted under those circumstances. I would rather be rejected, but stay true to myself and my values than be accepted by someone that isn't who I really, truly should be accepted by.
So piggybacking on that idea, a slightly different angle to that. Years ago, somebody came to me and said, she had written to Ellen like hundreds of times to have me and my blind kids on her show. Because she's like, Kristen, I just think that Ellen's audience, that she'd be really interested in you. Look at you raising your sons. And she's like, I'm so frustrated. I've written to her hundreds of times and she hasn't replied. And I was like, I don't want to be on her show at that moment. I mean, I love her. I watched her all the time. I love everything she puts in this world. But I said, the last thing that I wanted to be like 15 minutes of fame for was that it's a very good friend of mine. I love her to death. But she was missing the mark because she wanted me to be famous for the fact that I got out of bed every day and got these kids to the bus and did like the normal stuff. And she just thought that it was amazing that I would. And I'm like, well, then every mom should be on that show. Like I'm just doing what every mom does. That to me would look like the pity party. I don't want a pity party from Ellen. Like, isn't that great that she does this with 2 blind kids? So that's why when I was saying, if you saw my social media, when I was so ecstatic over my speech in Nashville a couple weeks ago, when I came off the stage, I mean, I love when people say you're a great mom. We all love that as moms.
Sure.
But for the first time, people did not say you're such a good mom. They said, you just changed my life. That's where I wanted to be, not just that I get up and do everything that other moms do every day, So sometimes too, I'm a perfectionist and I know how I want my work to go. And I don't necessarily, like if I'm rejected, then I got to take a look. That's why I love that we had our mastermind that we came along in and got to know each other, because you guys would say, here, pitch it differently. Take this. Like Mary Fran took my About the Author page. She's like, what? Switch these few words. And it was so much better. Like have somebody to bounce that stuff off. So when you do get rejected, it's like, wait a minute. Did I pitch this in the right way? Did I send it out to the world in the way that's going to make the most impact?
Yeah, and that's really important, Kristen, that whole idea of taking a critical look at it, but have other eyes look at it too. Because if you are, and I say this all the time, when I write stuff, I sit here and I think I'm hysterical. Well, I'm like,
you're your own best audience.
I am. I think I'm the best thing since sliced bread. But other people need to see it. So if you're not selling to yourself, you're not reaching yourself. So, and it's not that the content doesn't have value, but the way it's delivered, there's something to be said for that. The way it's put out there, there's something to be said for that. So if you are rejected, don't be afraid to get your tribe or your close, your besties, and put it out there to them and go, like, how does this read to you? How is this coming across to you? In fact, I'm doing this new book in it's going to come out in the summertime, and I'm working on cover ideas now. So I put out there on Facebook, I asked all of you privately in an email, and then I just put the thing up on Facebook, like, here's what I see when I see that, but what does everybody else see? Yeah. Because sometimes that's the thing that makes the difference between acceptance from your audience and rejection. You're not reaching them. You're resonating with you, but it has to go out of you. So you have to make sure it resonates with the out there and not just you.
Market research.
Yeah. I mean, for lack of
focus groups.
Well, and who your target is. You have to have that target. I mean, when I was doing the book, one of my very good friends said, it's too Philly, it's too you. You have to get a little more, the word was so smart, I don't even know it. But she wanted me to be a little more smarty pants in it, to be eloquent. I had to be a little more, and I was like, And then Mary Fran looked at it and she's like, that's not even you anymore. Wait a minute. Go back to some of these words that are you, and you're talking to that mom on the couch that's crying. It can't be heavy. It can't be eloquent. It can't be big time education.
You know, it was really funny. You sent me at one point two forwards or intros or something like that. And one of them was written by someone who you had helping you, and another one was written by you. And I was just drawn to this one thing. And I thought it was written by the other person. It didn't make any sense to me, because the way I read your email, you said, the way I interpreted your email, it indicated that the other person had written the one that I was drawn to. Well, it turns out when I sent it back to you with a few minor things, you said to me, well, where's the other one? This is mine. And it was yours that I was drawn to initially.
Yeah. You were so stunned. And then she texts me, I'm stunned that the really good one came from you.
That wasn't what I meant.
Yeah, sometimes your tone, though,
Yeah.
Wow, Smedex, you produced that?
I'm not gentle.
Good for you.
I'm not gentle with my chicks. I'm not gentle.
No, nothing gentle about you.
And we wouldn't want you to. And Kristen, that speaks to what Robin said, continuing to be your authentic self.
Yeah.
So, all right, chicks, we should probably wrap this up. But I do have to say that you about changing lives. And I would have loved to have heard how many 9th and 10th grade Catholic high school girls' lives I would have changed had I been on student council. But I'm going to let it go.
Wow. Are you now? Are you going to let it go?
Kat,
I'm going to mix in that music when I mix this in. We're going to have Let It Go playing in the back.
I wish you would.
Oh my gosh.
All right. Any other little brilliance bombs to share?
I'm tapped out, folks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been brilliant. That was a lot of brilliance.
Yeah, I would sum up and say, lick your wounds, take a critical eye, figure out what you did wrong, and just keep running into that brick wall, because someday you're going to break through it.
Yeah. If you need practice and resilience from rejection, send a text to Mary Fran. She'll tell you. She'll give you all the muscle and resilience that you need.
She'll make you feel great. Okay,
I'm just going to warn you. She's going to say, go lick your wounds and get over it.
Get over yourself, Marcino. Get over yourself. That's what I'm going to have on my epitaph, on my tombstone. I'm like, get over yourself. What? I guess she did, Well, thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We hope that we made just the idea of rejection not so icky. And please follow us on that social thing, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and our YouTube channel, where you can see us live and laughing and making all kinds of crazy hand gestures and whatnot. And we'd love to hear how you handle rejection. So leave us a comment. When you're out there, leave us a review, preferably one with a lot of stars. So
5.
We've got some great guests coming up, and the reason why we're able to get these great guests is because we're building our audience, because we're listening to you and bringing people to you that you really want to hear. So thank you for that, and we will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.